This week on Phantom Power Hour.
I had slept on that style of guitar for a long time, and the G&L was my first one I've ever owned.
It just blows my mind that that's still like creme de la creme.
And there's bands that I look at, or producers that I like hold to high esteem who do that.
Why is Fender regarded so highly amongst players?
Can we just jump right in with a rabbit hole question?
Please
Okay.
hit me.
So you brought up in the last episode, which we are filming back to back, but you're enjoying
Ooh,
a
peek
week
behind
apart.
the curtain.
So you brought up G&L and how it's not a Fender. I have recently got my first G&L,
Yes.
and I've played a lot of Fenders. I have a full disclosure. I do have a sponsored G&L video coming. So, but I don't have to say anything on this channel. So
Right. Yeah, you can.
So
let
whether or
your-
not you think I'm a shill, I don't have to be a shill here. So,
Not yet, at least. we'll shill when we can.
but playing that guitar, I honestly didn't know what to expect. And like I'm super familiar with Fender, as I feel like 90% of guitar players out there are.
Right.
I mean, even my kids who are 7 and 4, if I ask them what a guitar looks like and they draw it, it's a Stratocaster.
Oh, yeah.
Which is typically a Fender. I know there's 101 things out there, but like if there was a name that was ubiquitous, it's Fender. And are we thinking about Leo Fender or the company Fender? I don't know. But when I got that G&L, I was shocked like how good it was. And I mean, it's not a cheap guitar. It's like around $2,000, I think. But if you spend that same amount on a $2,000 Fender, this thing blows it out of the way. I mean, It's not even close.
Yeah. Can confirm. I've played it.
And I don't understand why G&L isn't held more as like what Fender really wanted. Because he sold that company. He sold Fender in like the 50s or 60s. And then had a non-compete for a long, long time. Went to Music Man while he was still under the radar, which I didn't know that. Really, like how integrated he was with Music Man. So when I was searching for a Strat, this was years ago, but I was searching for a Strat trying to find a Fender, and I was ready to drop some money. I couldn't find a Fender Strat that like I wasn't paying a stupid amount for, and that would stay in tune and play, and that felt good. And I've got a Music Man. I ended up purchasing the Music Man, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And knowing that now, and then going back to G&L, I'm like, why does the company Fender seem like it's attached to Leo Fender so tightly when these other companies that he had, and like subsequently his later designs, and like these ideas that he had in his head, why aren't they held to a higher standard? Or
In higher regards.
yeah, in higher regards, because like that was like his pinnacle of his career, because he didn't stop creating.
Yeah, I would argue that G&L is more Fender than Fender itself is for that reason, because it is it's extending Leo's kind of creativity in design, and like you're saying, kind of the pinnacle of him as a creator.
Yeah,
And an instrument maker.
it's just such an interesting point of like American music history within the products world that, I mean, I'm sure there's more people who know more that could speak to the nuances of this, but I'm just surprised looking at it, even as like a nonchalant guitar player. I've been in bands, I've toured a little bit. I mean, and I've played guitars and owned guitars, but I'm like, why is Fender the one? Even in my own head, like their marketing is just so far out ahead of these other companies.
So before I get into kind of adding on to that, I think it is absolutely wild that the first stab at electric guitar is still considered the pinnacle of electric guitar. Like, you can go out and you can get any of these brands. First of all, the S-type and the T-type, Strat types and Tele body types are being replicated across the spectrum from super budget models to something that would far surpass what you would pay for a custom shop Fender.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still based on the two original electric guitar styles, not even just the body styles, but the pickup styles.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to go spend the most amount of money possible, try to find an original one of those.
Mm-hmm.
But it just blows my mind that that's still like creme de la creme. And it was one of the first kind of stabs at making an electric guitar. And of course, you have the Gretches that came about, and there's like the whole Gibson thing, and you can argue whether or not Fender even made the first electric guitar. Like, I know that's a whole heated discussion. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying,
At least from like a commercial standpoint,
right?
And like what the market latched onto. Like, it's hard to imagine a world without the Stratocaster.
Yeah, or the Tele for that matter. But to get on to what you were saying, I think that there is a lot of kind of brand and dealership kind of negotiations that Fender does to get its name out ahead. I think there's a whole lot of advertising and marketing, like you're saying, that is helping them out and always has helped them out. But honestly, I feel like one of the biggest aspects might be the sounds that you grew up listening to, and that, you know, the people since like the mid 50s grew up listening to when it comes to guitar are predominantly Strats and Telecasters.
Mm-hmm.
If not that, then Gibson.
Yep. Well, and there was a short stint with like a Jazzmaster, right? Because it was kind of developed. That thing was weird because the legend has it, Leo, when he was talking, like he developing those guitars, like he would walk up to people and just hand them guitars. And like he did his research by forcing it on other people to play.
Yeah, dude, just market research.
Like, but the Jazzmaster was not like that. He did it just on his own, and then wanted to market it to jazz players, which was cool. As that, I mean, Jazzmasters can play almost anything. Like the tonal flexibility in those things is nuts. And I had slept on that style of guitar for a long time, and the GNL was my first one I've ever owned. But it's weird that when he was developing that and having like these certain jazz players in mind, like the surf community, like latched onto it so hard, and then grunge, and then like all this other stuff with like that. The Jazzmaster body type is like ubiquitous with like that shoegaze and like ambient style.
You
stuff.
hardly ever see anybody playing jazz on it.
Right.
Yeah.
But it totally can.
It can do a lot of things. Honestly though, I think I like the Tele for jazz the most. And I know that sounds weird.
Yeah.
But give me a solid lipstick pickup.
Yeah.
On neck the neck position. I just love that sound.
It's buttery.
It is very buttery. But your GNL that you got, do you remember the model of it?
It's a Doheny CLF Research, which is the Clarence Leo Fender Research, like basically his, I don't know if it's like his experimental stuff, but it's the higher end of GNL, like US made stuff. And I mean, just like most other companies, they have their lines that are made outside the US.
Yeah.
And do with that what you will. But it's very much a Jazzmaster. The pickups are crazy unique. And you played it.
Yes. And it took me a hot second to wrap my head around what they're doing.
Yeah. Like you mentioned your bass in the last one. It's like this interesting thing that he did with those. It's honestly one of the first guitars besides my PRS where I'm like, I don't want to ever change these. They sound great.
Yeah.
And like if I want a sound, I can get it with that guitar. And the other side of it, like I was looking for a Jazzmaster for a long time, a couple of years at this point, and I tried some big names, and not to poop on these big names, but like I had a Veritas in here, had a couple Sirs that were like custom that people were trying to unload. I had a Fender, and I couldn't the Fender I couldn't get to stay in tune. That could be a one-off, sure. The Sir was awesome, but that bridge, something about it just was very unstable. Again, could be a one-off. And the Veritas, killer guitar. I just didn't meld with it in that neck profile. I don't know what it was. And the GNL was the first one that that was the first thing I went, because I had such trouble with bridges on Jazzmaster style stuff with tremolos.
Yeah.
So I just dive bombed the crap out of that thing and just kept going at it. And it snapped right back into tune. It is stable.
Yeah.
It's really stable.
The bridge on that, it's not hanging up over there. I tried to look past to check it out. But the bridge on that is very cool. Like, it's not anything fancy or special, but it came stock as a floating bridge, right?
Yeah. Let me go grab it.
Okay, you go grab that.
This is it.
I love the color, man.
I would not have picked this color, but once I got it, I love it.
Something about like pastel pinks and greens and blues I absolutely adore. The faceplate as well
it's textured.
It's textured. And I would think if you were just telling me with words, yeah, I got this guitar, it's pink, and it has like this textured faceplate that looks kind of plasticky, but not, I don't think I'd be into it.
Yeah.
But I love the look of it.
I know. Well, one thing I didn't take into account, and this is a total vanity thing, like, I'm a big boy, and I look weird holding most guitars, but like, if I sit with a Jazzmaster, it like covers most of my body. I don't look like a massive dude playing a tiny little toy. Like, but
so,
yeah.
I this again, it's not a sponsored piece of content, but
no, I'm just stoked on it.
Why don't can you walk us through kind of the switches and dials and all that, just for, folks that are curious about this one?
So I don't remember the name of these pickups, but they're like his very specific. There's got to be a way to hold this where it makes sense.
Do you want me to hold it while you point around?
Maybe. Can we do that? So the pickups are like larger than normal pickups. So that's another reason I probably couldn't change these out. Up here, like, you've got your normal like neck bridge selector dial, but down here, the other switches, that's what's going to change it from, like, at the bottom you have a parallel where each of these coils is running parallel, which is a really interesting sound.
Mm-hmm.
In the middle, where you have like their single coils, just like a normal single coil guitar, and then humbuckers. And then depending if you're running one or the other, like, you can get some really interesting like phasey stuff happening, especially if all of them are running while they're all parallel.
Can't you select like outer or inner as singles?
I think I was wrong about that when I told you that initially. But the best that when I went and looked it up, like, I thought that's what was happening. Like, you're choosing one of these coils and it was a single coil, but I think it's just
series or
parallel, single coil, or humbucker mode. So,
and that is bridge, neck.
that could
all
be
those
backwards.
Options.
I don't remember. I just kind of move it and flip it until then I remember. So
yeah,
it's more muscle memory, but actually sitting here.
And then volume, tone. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so I brought this up earlier. So the bridge doesn't seem like it's anything really, really fancy. But
I'm
it
interested
feels.
to see what you're gonna say here.
I was just gonna say it feels incredible, and it feels like you mentioned earlier. It feels very stable in comparison to like a stock Strat kind of.
Oh yeah.
Trim arm.
The one thing I did do is I absolutely packed this cavity.
Oh,
there goes the arm. I didn't tighten it down. Whoop. I did pack this back cavity like full of foam. You can kind of see it in there. Because it was so resonant right off the bat, and like most of the stuff I'm gonna use this for is studio, and it would just sing like crazy because those springs are so resonant, and the body itself was crazy, like acoustic. But the thing that sold me on it and was like, I don't even know if this is in tune. Yeah, of course it is. Like, just abuse it. Still in tune.
Yeah.
That little thing.
Oh man, that is no little thing.
Well, and I'm cranking on it
Yeah.
too. Like I'm like, and it's in tune.
Going back to why is Fender regarded so highly amongst players in comparison to other brands, not only specifically G&L, but I know that this one doesn't have it, but obviously it doesn't need locking tuners. That's what I'm bringing up here.
But I did wrap it with a string lock.
Okay.
So whatever, if I'm stringing up any guitar that doesn't have locking tuners, which I love locking tuners, I'll string lock them.
Well, my point is locking tuners are not so expensive that you're going to be throwing away your revenue or your not revenue, income. When you're selling an item, there's revenue and then there's profit. Sorry. So you're not going to, as a company.
Oh, like if you were to put them on and then.
Yeah, as a company, if you include locking tuners, you're not throwing away your profit margin. So why don't more people include them? I'm not saying that they need to be on Squires, but if you're going to spend, $800 on a player series, why not get locking tuners?
But I think to your point, like a company, especially larger companies, like pumping stuff out, there is a certain amount where, yeah, that's going to eat into their bottom line like crazy. I mean, change it on one guitar, no, that's not going to change it very much. But take a step back and look at their entire line or their entire production over the course of a year. Like you've eaten 10% of your profits at that point.
Okay, then charge $820 and include locking tuners, because then if we were to poll all the guitar players that play a Fender guitar that is not an American stand or American custom,
Sure.
how many of them are going to complain about intonation and just going out of tune?
Oh, a fair bit.
I understand locking tuners does not automatically solve that, but put locking tuners on, drastically reduce the number of people that have those complaints.
Well, okay. To that point, here's a weird tangent you can go down. Poll any number of drivers. How many are going to complain about potholes? How many are going to complain about raising taxes to fix those potholes?
That's a really good point. That's a really good point.
Like, it's just, it's a fight you'll never win. But I think and I'm not saying like Fender makes bad guitars. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just curious because it seems like Fender has held on to like that Leo Fender persona for so long, and even as players we kind of hold that up to be like his legacy, where there were things after that he cared about just as much, if not more, and he had close ties to and was actually competitive with. So like, why? That's my curiosity.
Yeah, well, it's like one of those bands where you love their first 2 or 3 albums and then you don't really like the new stuff.
Yeah, okay.
But I'm with you, man. I think, first of all, I think more people just need to understand kind of the legacy of Leo and how he navigated through, like Fender is not his only work, his only project or passion. But I just keep coming back to why is it held so highly? And we talked about this in the past too, on the bass side of things, on how, I never enjoyed Fender basses, particularly when I started playing. Now I've grown and I understand the place in terms of tonality, but still with the feel, I can get similar tones with, it's not like there are some special Fender pickups that make that tone. No. Right? So you can get the same pickups in a similar body style from a company that is making it with much better feel, and you don't have sharp frets and all the bells and whistles you could want for a similar price. So why is it that it's Fender that you need to see on the wall of the studio, hanging there to be used on the track, instead of a Sadowski or something in that realm?
That's a good point. And then I guess to play my own devil's advocate, I just bought my daughter a guitar. And I was on a Jazzmaster kick, so I bought her a 3/4 size Jazzmaster, and it was a
cool.
Fender. Well, and even at a price point of $189 for, I think that's a pretty decent first
That's
guitar.
a great, yeah.
And I was shocked at how good that thing was. Like it, I mean, it's a fixed bridge for her. I mean, she's learning. I don't want to add a weird variable.
For sure.
Fixed bridge, not a lot you can screw up there, but like the pickups in it, the fretwork that they did on it for $180. I'm like, this is dumb. But it just made me mad because I've shopped for Fenders at like the $1,000 price point, and I'm like, this $180 thing that I bought my daughter is just as good.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, you see, Jeremy, we have things called tone woods. Okay. No, I think that ushers in a really cool point of, yes, instruments are inflating in price across the board when you look at the high professional end level of things. And I think a lot of that is because you have a lot more names in the game. You have higher expectations and standards of quality of instruments. Material costs are going up. All those economical things play a part. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, you are going to have a hard time finding a non-playable, very affordable instrument when you're looking at guitars or basses. And that wasn't the case, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, you got the Harley Bentons, you got the Eastmans, the like super budget Squire like Affinity line and stuff. All of them, if you really needed to, you could track in a studio.
Yeah.
And
It'll take a little bit of work, but yeah.
it'll take some work, of course, but you can use it on specific professional level things. You're not going to want to go gig a 3.5, 4 hour gig with it. You're going to have a lot of problems with either tuning or maybe some sharp pieces on the bridge or the nut that breaks strings, that kind of thing. But in terms of fret leveling, intonation, and just across the board quality out of the box, it's absurd how good it is now for sub $200.
Yeah. It's bonkers. And I thought like that was going to be a redeeming factor when I got that guitar for my daughter. And then the more I thought about it, the more it just pissed me off. I was like, okay, you can do this for that price.
Yeah. Yeah.
What else can you do for that price? But I guess it also makes sense. Like, I mean, she's 7. Her first guitar is a Fender. It says Fender on it. And so what is she going to look at when she goes and plays another guitar? And that one wasn't terrible. My first guitar sucked. It sucked hard. It was not fun to play. Like, hers is great. It's just weird in 25 years how far we've come.
You brought up this point about her first one is a Fender, and so most likely that will be the forefront of her mind moving forward, looking at other instruments, right? It's like that whole, you just got this car and now that's the only car you see on the road. So I wonder how much of that plays into that discussion of why is Fender still the household name? Do you think it's because, like, the generation before us, you had so many fewer options when it came to instrument manufacturers, and you heard those guitars on all the albums, but also your first guitar was probably a Fender if you were born in the 70s or 80s or 90s.
Maybe. Yeah. I mean, I guess what I'm coming at is a little, I see that point, and I think there's validity to it. I guess when I'm talking about my confusion with it, as I guess among players who know,
Yeah.
why is Fender as a company still seen as like equal to Leo Fender, rather than these other companies like Music Man or GNL, for instance. Like, if we're attaching builders, because builders are kind of becoming the rock stars of the I mean, even the smaller companies, Marco,
Mm-hmm.
making killer instruments, but I think most people wouldn't know what a Marco is
Right.
or who he is or where he's based out of. But if you need a bass, they're pretty killer.
Pretty awesome.
I've got one, you have many.
Yes.
Like PRS. Like if you know PRS and you know Paul Reed Smith, the dude, the man, and like he's known as an influential person in the industry. Then like Leo, who's, you know, we remember him as somebody attached to Fender. So I guess that's a hard block to get around because obviously that company didn't change its name when he sold it.
Right.
But he also wasn't going to stop making instruments and stop experimenting and researching all these different avenues that he could innovate the instrument itself.
Yeah. I even though he sold the company and he was no longer affiliated with it, I do kind of feel that his spirit still lives on with the Strat and the Tele at the heart of it, you know? But I'm very much with you. I think that it is kind of odd that Fender and Leo, like Fender the company, Leo the man, still seem tied together when that hasn't been the case for a very long time.
Yeah. Weird.
It is weird. How about, okay, we're talking about like older guitar brand, but like early in guitar history brands. Did you ever play a Gretsch, own a Gretsch?
I owned a very cheap Gretsch.
Yeah.
I've played some very expensive ones, but I think I owned what was an Electromatic.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say they're around the $800 price point.
Mm-hmm.
Stupid good guitars.
Yeah.
Like, and I played some of the super expensive ones. Like, great. I want to say the cheap Gretches were they Korean made?
That sounds right. Either Korean or Indonesian.
I don't remember exactly.
I think Korean might be right.
But
I own one, but I don't remember where it's from.
you have a cheaper Gretsch?
I have an Electromatic with the Bigsby. Yeah.
Yeah, they're great.
They're awesome, and it goes back to the whole build quality. Like the neck binding is immaculate.
Yeah.
And it's the cheapest, well, not the cheapest Gretsch you can get, but it is one of the lowest
best
cost
sub
ones.
$1,000 guitars.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, especially in that style of like hollow body Bigsby. Did I just describe the only guitar?
Well, mine's actually a solid body.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Is that, what is it, the Duojet? Or the...
No, it's still just under the Electromatic branding. I don't know if there is anything
I'm not super familiar with that.
more kind of narrow in terms of model name, but imagine the semi-hollow one, but
Mine
it's not
was the
that.
fully hollow.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah,
Feedback
so
City.
I loved it though.
Yeah.
Like for what I playing that thing on stage, like they're so gnarly. Love it.
Yeah. What's your take on those Filtron pickups though? Because
Okay.
I like them for that sound. I have a really hard time using them for anything other than the Gretsch sound though.
Okay, this is where I'm stupid when it comes to pickups.
Mm-hmm.
I only notice pickups when there's a problem.
Yeah.
Or when I really don't like them. Like, I know I've had players in here and session players and even buddies who play guitar who like are pickup aficionados. That is not me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, if they feel weird, I replace them and I look for recommendations. I think the one I did on my Fenders, I just went with Antiquities.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. Somebody recommended it. I just didn't like the ones that were in it, and that was an American Tele.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I didn't. I'd completely forgotten about that, but I hated those pickups in that thing. They just did not sound. It's not the fault of the guitar. I didn't tighten it down.
It was just agreeing with you.
Yeah, it passed out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my Fender American Tele, I didn't like those pickups. Everything else about the guitar was cool. I had to get the frets redressed on it now that I think about it. Again, that's a problem.
That's a big ordeal.
Could be a one-off. Could be.
Well, and that's true for any of the things that we're talking about. And I also want to mention that regardless of brand, pricing, or any of the other variables, if you try an instrument and it feels right, it speaks to you in some kind of way, or opens up this other avenue of creativity, that's all that matters.
Oh, yeah.
It could be a no-name that somebody built in their garage and it looks gross, but if it pulls something else out of you, then it's a good instrument.
Mm-hmm.
But
which there's a... Do you know Zach Day?
yeah,
He plays some Indiana...
Django.
Oh, is that Django?
It's either Zach. Okay, Zach either plays a Django or it's
It was a pink, like, S-style guitar.
I believe it was. You ever met Django?
Mm-mm.
Killer dude, killer player. Makes some sick pickups. His guitars are awesome as well. But I think one of the claims to fame are his the pickups that he winds for him. I don't remember what his brand name is, but Jacob Huff's. Maybe he calls them Harrison guitars.
That sounds right.
Yeah. So the reason I might have gotten it mixed up is because Harrison guitars usually have Django pickups in them. So
It was a Harrison.
okay. Harrison
Yeah.
guitars are also awesome. He is so good at relic work. I love Harrison relic work.
That's got to be it. He'll text me and confirm, but, I mean, again, smaller companies doing stupid good work, and that's an Indiana company?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember if he went there, but from the same town as we went to college.
Really?
Yeah. It's wild how many people kind of glow up out of that little town.
Anderson, Indiana.
Anderson,
What a
Indiana.
little crock pot. That's not the term. Demonetized. Bleep that out.
Yeah, it's not staying in there, but yeah, it has been really cool to see just the world of luthiers keep growing, and there's a lot of kind of creativity even in like really small things. There's a brand, it's not Vola, something similar, starts with a V, not remembering it, but they're the way you know it's theirs is the headstock has like a shelf on it, so where the logo and the name is just like cut down ever so slightly, and it has a really nice like S-curve slope or like bevel on it, and it just looks nice. And then for like the higher end custom order ones, you can have the matching headstock paint, but only on the lower portion or only on the higher portion. Have you seen or played Upegs?
No.
That's a company out of Japan. So
Upegs.
the last thing, before I dive into that, the last thing that you were, that I had brought up about Gretsch and their pickups, you had mentioned that you don't really think much about the pickups unless there's something kind of wrong or something that you don't like the sound of.
Yeah.
I am still that way as like when it's in my hands, but from like the theory side or the just trying to understand more and more about the instrument itself, I have a really cool opportunity where one of my students kind of has like a guitar museum, basically. He has 3 all original, he has a 64 Tele, a 64 Strat, and a 64 Jazz Master, I think.
Wow.
All original. So I can try that and like get the feel and the sound of what that actually is, which is really rare these days for somebody to be able to actually experience that, and even more rare to not experience that in just like a showroom floor of a fancy guitar store or something,
Yeah.
right? So I can do this like in his home through multiple different amps because one of his hobbies is building amps.
Who is this person?
His name's Ron. He's a cool dude.
Build me an amp, Ron.
I think he just finished one recently. If I remember correctly, it's like a Dumble clone.
Oh, build me an amp, Ron.
One amp that he just also got. I'm gonna space on what it actually is. I want to say Matchless, but it's a 1-of-1 Halloween edition where on the inside the whole team signed it Happy Halloween.
Oh.
And if I remember correctly, it was one of Mayer's that he owned for a hot second.
Ron.
I could be wrong about that last part.
So
I don't want to be spreading misinformation.
So I see why he likes Dumbles. Okay.
Yeah. But
all right.
So my point though is I've had this unique experience of being able to try out many different high-end custom shop small luthier guitars, including Upeg, Vola. What's the Nashville one? He has some, I believe, Veritas. There's a really cool Nashville brand too that I love.
Don't know.
Novo guitars. But the point is, because I've been exposed to so many different, not only like builds of guitar, but also pickup layouts, that now it's exposed me to thinking more about the pickups themselves. And it goes back to kind of the ignorance is bliss. When you don't understand theory, you can just listen to music and enjoy it for what it is. When you don't understand pickups, that's great because they just sound how they sound and you like it or you don't like it.
Yeah.
But now I'm wondering, like, are those Lawlers in there, or, you know, do you have a treble bleed circuit on that? And
Interesting.
what kind of combo are these quarter pounds? How do they have the like copper backing? What's going on? So it just makes me curious now. I don't know nearly enough to be able to tell you what I like and what I don't like out of certain pickup brands or combinations or windings, but
Well, I think it should be said too, like, I'm looking at this very producer engineer minded, which I guess you could take multiple directions, but we're working on stuff pretty quick. So it's like wide brush strokes type of stuff where I wholly appreciate the granularity of, I like this instrument and the feel of it, and I need to get this little extra 2-3%, whatever that is, by changing out the pickup. Then there's bands that I look at, or producers that I like hold to high esteem, who do that. But it's a different approach, I think, because they get to spend so much time chasing this one sound in their head, where I'm like, let me throw a bunch of paint at a canvas and like I kind of got the color right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's so many other things that I can change that would affect the tone much quicker. Moving the mic a millimeter.
yeah.
Like changing out the speaker cab. And then I would start looking at like, maybe the amp isn't right. And then like, if all those other things are absolutely perfect, then pickups. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think so before we started rolling today, there was this moment where you were telling me about a specific mic with like the model number, and I had to wait for you to come out into the room and show me which one. I was like, sorry, man, it'll be a while before I know like all the different names and have those in my head. And you're like, oh, sorry, I forget about that kind of stuff sometimes. And I think that's what's happening now, because yeah, there's so much granularity in the pickups, but how much granularity do you understand about how heavy the capsule is in a microphone and how that affects the sound, or what kind of saturation you get out of this compressor versus this compressor, and all those granularities that 99% of players don't even realize are a thing.
Sure.
You know, so
They're like, that's valid. Like, I'm just doing it in a different area. That's valid.
Well, and I think that's the magic of, you know, when you get a engineer that knows that specific amount of details, and then you get a group of players that on their respective instruments understand the granularities with their own niches, then it all comes together in this crock pot of goodness.
Well, and it makes me think maybe I've thought about guitar wrong for all these years as a player, because I mostly I don't interpret my guitars, and it should be said, I'm not a very good guitar player. But I don't interpret guitars as like them sounding different. I mean, they clearly do. And I know how to dial in different sounds.
Mm-hmm.
But I more think about it like, how does it feel? Like that's like, and I guess that's why I would never think about switching a pickup as a first option.
Mm-hmm.
Because that seems like adding a variable that I'm horrified to do.
Yeah.
Like if I have all these other things that I can experiment with and control, changing out the pickups feels so final.
When you say how it feels, is that only the physical, how the neck? Nothing happened. You didn't see anything.
We definitely didn't cut.
No.
So
when you're talking about the feel, do you only mean like the physical, like how the neck feels in your hand, how the body feels, or do you mean the feel in terms of how the pickups are responding?
the push-pull.
Yeah.
Like the push and pull response. Like if you have a really good acoustic instrument where it just feels like you don't have to make a sound, like it wants to make a sound and you're just giving it permission to.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really weird way to answer that, but like there definitely is like a push-pull with different instruments, and I feel like cheap ones are a lot less likely to have that relationship, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you sit down at a really good piano, like it wants to be played.
Yeah.
And like you could be so delicate and it's going to sing regardless of the volume. Same with a guitar. Like some guitars you feel like you have to push it along a little bit, and some just want to be right there with you.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this up.
Let's wrap it up.
Camera's doing something weird.
It's getting hot in here. So, Recommendations, yeah.
I have one. We're like, will the camera last?
Will it last? Enter suspenseful music here.
We've pushed it to the brink.
In a world where cameras overheat.
Mine is B. Toles and the KOP Singers. Killer gospel. Like, just ripping. I did work with that, man. They came and recorded and I mixed and mastered, but they are killer.
That's righteous. I feel like gospel music of that caliber gets slept on by way too many people.
Players are so good. And we've been talking this whole time about expensive instruments. Most of them are playing like crazy affordable stuff. Like the drummer was playing. It was a really cheap kit, and it didn't matter. Like all this, most of it's in the hands. Like,
yeah. Well, there's definitely an argument to be made of forcing a budget instrument to sound good increases your ability to be a high level player. But we won't get into that because we're already in record wrecks.
And the camera's starting to overheat.
Mine for this week is this dude named Aaron Gibson. I learned of Aaron many years ago, and I think we also met. Aaron, if you see this, let me know. Remind me of how we met if we did. It might have been at NAMM. But he's a bass player, vocalist that has a lot of really interesting kind of solo bass and vocal tracks. His name's Aaron Gibson. Just about anything that you find of his on his YouTube stuff, because his music videos that he makes are also really creative and cool. He does so much, like he does cool woodworking, photography of like macro stuff with little bugs and everything. But his music is awesome. I don't know if I could pick a favorite, honestly. See the World is very cool. Silly Me is very cool. But check him out. It's a unique take because there's not a whole lot of solo singer songwriters that are playing bass and singing. But with that, and with this overheating camera, thanks for hanging out with us on Phantom Power Hour. We didn't say welcome, but you know you're always welcome here.
Always.
If you liked what you heard, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, maybe ding the bell. It's a good time. And
put a Christmas tree in the comment.
A Christmas tree.
Yeah, why
yeah,
not?
yeah.
Tis the almost season.
Tis the almost season. And what do you think about Fender and kind of where they sit on the guitar hierarchy?
Or let me amend that. Or why we latch on to certain brands. On this whole video, I don't want it to come across like we hate Fender. I love my Fender guitars. But why do we latch on to certain brand identities?
What's your favorite brand?
Or why do we all not like PV's logo? Can we just say that?
You had to say it. You had to say it.
Until next time.
Until next time. Bye.